me in the hot seat. So, okay, here's what we want to know.
Up above the balls, in a way.
In the taint zone?
In front of the taint. Behind the balls.
Pre-taint.
Above.
Post balls.
Below the wiener. Yeah, it's a jumble of stuff down there.
It's between the wiener and the balls.
Yeah, sure.
The day I turned 30, Facebook showed me sponsored content for my new demographic. Makeup tips for old ladies. Tinder followed in a similar vein with ad after ad for egg freezing. While social media was doing its best to make me worry about my biological clock, the social milieu of New York City was not. And when I first went to my OB and mentioned wanting to start trying when I was 32, the doctor reassured me and said that his youngest patient at that time was 37 years old. So I thought, hey, got all the time in the world, or at least another few years. Also, I tried to do something with my hair. Don't make fun of me. Or do. It's good for engagement. I didn't consider egg freezing when I was 30. It was way out of my budget. It cost around $10,000 per egg retrieval, and at the time, I was making less than $40,000 a year. So that decision was kind of made for me. But I did take solace in this episode of Adam Ruins Everything.
I gotta get bacon now before this oven breaks down. I mean, they have done studies.
Sure, but where those studies got their data from is real weird.
Was it from a large, well-conducted sample of modern women?
Nope, it came from rural French census records from the 1600s.
But vous êtes best? C'est paradis! Seriously? I have been getting fertility advice from a bunch of 400-year-old French farmers?
I've seen a lot of content that's geared towards women that cites this 1700s French peasant data as an example of how it's just a myth that we need to have a baby by 35.
Between the ages of 35 and 39, it can take at least a year to get pregnant for a lot of people. And yes, for some people, but that's not always the case. Do you know what year, or when you take a look at that research and see where they're citing that research from, just guess what year it's from.
52.
1952?
Yeah.
Okay. No, it is actually taken from, wait, let me see, I wrote it down just to make sure. French birth records ranging from the 1600s.
Having gone through IVF and having learned a lot about the effect aging has on your chances of getting pregnant along the way, I have some thoughts about the way this data is being presented. It's definitely true that women get pregnant in their mid to late 30s now way more than they did in the 1700s. Some researchers have pointed out could be because we're having sex later in life. How do they know that?
Yeah.
Actually, I'm debunking this. How could they know that? No one was writing down how much they banged.
I think the same amount of banging has always been going on.
Well, I think you're also making that up.
Yes.
Okay. The Adam Ruins Everything episode also points out that this specific set of data, which led us to the idea that you should try to have a baby by 35, doesn't account for the fact that we have IVF now.
Emily, this is Jean Twangy, the author of The Impatient Woman's Guide to Getting Pregnant and the researcher who discovered the truth about this data.
You know, when I wanted to have kids in my late 30s, I was as freaked out about these studies as anyone. But I'm a researcher, so I looked into it. I found out nobody really noticed that these claims were based on such old data. And that's a problem, because that means they come from a time before fertility treatment, antibiotics, or modern medicine.
As someone who's gone through IVF, I can say with confidence that IVF is not necessarily an easy or convenient solution to fertility struggles. It's typically hugely expensive, even if your insurance does offer some IVF coverage. You don't have to look any further than GoFundMe to find a gallery of couples who are struggling to pay for their fertility treatment. Insurance covered $10,000 worth of our IVF treatment, and we still had to pay another $15,000 on top of that. We're still paying off our IVF bills, and I'm almost 27 weeks pregnant. Like, by the time we're done paying for IVF, we'll have a baby.
Yeah.
who will then also be expensive. I should point out that we got genetic testing, which added another $8,000 to our total bill. We also have to pay another $800 per year for the embryos that we made but haven't used yet, that are on ice in a storage facility on the Upper East Side.
Yeah, we're already paying rent for our kids.
Oh, if you think about it, 5 embryos, like that's 5 people paying $800 a year on the Upper East Side. Like that's actually really good.
Bargain.
Also important to keep in mind, we got lucky. We did a fresh embryo transfer after our first round of IVF and it stuck. If this embryo hadn't stuck around, we would have had to try again, and that would have been another, I'm sure, few $1,000s. And then if we had run out of embryos, then we would have had to start the whole process over again with all the thousands of dollars worth of medications and treatments. I actually know someone who was one of the first IVF babies. That was her then. This is her today. This guy gets it. Yeah. Now I want to go back and take a look at egg freezing, the first reproductive assistive technology that was advertised to me at age 30.
I froze all my eggs recently, a bit too sci-fi for my tastes. It shouldn't work, right? Who knows if it will? My dad was like, how do you know they're going to give you your eggs back? And I was like, I don't. Awkward turtle, random, I don't. Getting your eggs frozen, first of all, you pay $10 billion. I'm like, oh, I want to live in a loft, but instead I have eggs in Midtown. Omelet, anyone?
It's become a lot more popular in recent years as maternal ages increase. Studies have shown that the earlier you choose to freeze your eggs, the better chance of conception at a later date. The first study to review websites that advertise egg freezing found that most of these sites do not follow advertising guidelines. The guidelines aim to protect women from false hopes by recommending that clinics include information on the woman's age and its possible impact on success, as well as clinic-specific success rates, risks, and costs. All of these parameters were mentioned by very few of the websites, regardless of their affiliation. I understand why egg freezing is such a big business. At around age 30, with no boyfriend or husband in sight, it was really painful contemplating a future without children. I met Andrew when I was 31, we got married when I was 32, and we immediately started trying. Like, I did this as quickly as I could have, and I think a lot of people are in my same boat, where it's like no matter when you would like to start having kids, life just isn't lining up to where that's possible until you're in your mid to late 30s. So let's talk about why Andrew and I went for IVF. We fall into the approximately 30% of couples with infertility who have what's called unexplained infertility, which is a very annoying diagnosis to have.
Not useful.
Yeah. Basically, they look at my tubes. There are no tube blockages. There's nothing getting in the way of me getting pregnant, like a physical obstruction. I have a normal amount of eggs for my age, which is not a ton, but they're still there. They're still ready to go. Andrew's sperm morphology, I don't want to speak for you, was a little on the... Start that over.
A little on the what?
Andrew had his sperm looked at and his numbers looked good across the board. He was a little low in the sperm morphology region, meaning that I want to get a shot of your face. Meaning that a slightly higher number of his sperm were a little oddly shaped.
Who's ready for Sperm Monday? This guy right here has multiple tails and a funky head. This type of sperm would not be able to get into the egg on its own. Abnormal sperm do not usually create abnormal babies. Hope you're having a better day than this guy.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
They were fine.
He's an electrician, so he's gotten radiated a lot. For how much you've been radiated, I think that they...
Well, electrocuted, maybe a little already.
Electrocuted, right, yeah. Yeah, electrocuted sperm. What else?
They're fine.
I wanted Andrew to come in and give the man's perspective on the IVF process, which is obviously much more perfunctory than the gals, but nonetheless disturbing and harrowing all on its own. Andrew,
Yeah,
take it away.
in its own way.
Andrew. Oh my
Yes.
God. Are you done burping?
Yeah.
Emit any gas that you're gonna need to emit.
Here's my hot tip. You're gonna go to a urologist at some point. You're gonna go to another doctor and an andrologist, and you're gonna get confused, and they're gonna ask for samples, but make sure you ask what they're getting a sample of. They thought I was in the andrologist, and they were like, give us a sample.
And you gave,
And I said, a sample of...
how embarrassing would it be if you handed them a
cup of sperm, a brimming cup of sperm, and all they wanted was urine? Like, that would just be...
Isn't there an uncomfortable physical exam where
where they poke each tube to make sure that works.
And the tubes
And then
are...
they get information from the urine sample in that regard as well, on like what's working.
I'm still understanding where the tubes are. What are they fondling exactly?
They're like behind the junk. It's up in the...
Don't say junk. We need to be medically specific. Balls.
Up above the balls
Taint.
in a way.
In the taint zone?
In front of the taint. Behind the balls.
Pre-taint.
Above.
Post balls.
Below the wiener. Yeah, it's a very...
Between the wiener and the balls.
Yeah, sure.
Why did you let me say taint earlier?
I don't know. I like it when you say taint.
Okay, sick. When you go in the room to masturbate into a cup.
They make you like abstain, and that's important for your quality of sample and everything, and like the numbers, right? So you're thinking about the numbers. And they make you feel bad too, like you've been a bad boy. You go into that closet and do that dirty thing. That's the way that, the nurse looks at you.
Go into the room, and it's a chair.
It's a chair with a piece of paper stretched over it. It's like a lazy boy, though. It's like supposed to be like a chill chair. I didn't sit in that chair. That's a gross chair. And they have this like computer that has like the internet, and it has like a
nice
paper printed out sign that says like, if you want any specific type of porn, we've got some loaded on here for you. If you want like specific pornography, you have to ask the nurse to come in and enter it.
Nurse, I need something with feet.
We're all, I think, too terrified to mention anything and just try to... Because there's also a guy on deck, like waiting for you to finish to go into this room and perform the same act that you have and slide his sample into the cylinder, So you're kind of trying to be respectful to all parties involved without having too much fun in there. That's the issue. I think they're like worried that some men are going to have too much fun in there, and I guarantee that it's not possible.
Before we did IVF, we did 2 failed rounds of intrauterine insemination. An intrauterine insemination, if you don't know, is the process where they stick a catheter so the sperm goes past your cervix, so it gets closer to the egg. So it kind of has no excuse for not fertilizing your egg. And if that doesn't work, then they say like, okay, we're gonna pull out the big guns with IVF. But when they do the IUI, they take the sperm sample, and they always told me when they gave me your sperm, they were always like, this is a good batch. Like,
yeah, I think they say that to everybody to just get
maybe. But no,
get it moving.
They looked at the number of sperm, and they were always like, it's a good number of sperm, and they do something called sperm washing before they stick it into you, where they basically get rid of any duds.
Washing sperm takes out the debris and the dead ones. You can see there's lots of round cells here. They are moving, and there's a good number of them, but look how much better it gets after washing. Look at this amazing wash. You can see there's a couple round cells still, but so much better. Tons moving, tons looking for that egg. Fantastic.
Eggs! Eggs! Eggs!
On our first retrieval, we retrieved 15 eggs. Of those 13 mature eggs, 11 successfully fertilized and 6 became embryos. We went on to genetically test those 6 embryos, and 3 were chromosomally normal and 3 were mosaic. That's totally in keeping with what the genetic counselor told me, which is that a woman my age could expect that out of all the embryos I made, I had a 50-50 shot of those embryos being chromosomally normal. Our doctor recommended that once we had our embryos that we do a fresh transfer and then freeze the rest and genetically test them. He called me the morning that they were going to do the procedure and he said, "We've got a beautiful embryo. Oh, it just looks mwah." Can you grab the picture from the fridge?
This one on the left?
Yeah, we keep a picture of our embryo on the fridge. You'll notice that it looks like a creme brulee, and I think that's what you're looking for.
I can't zoom in too far, but...
Zoom in! It's our baby. I don't want this to be an alarmist video by any means. More recent data does support the idea that increasingly women don't have any trouble getting pregnant within a year of trying before age 37. But you won't know if you're in the small percentage of people who do, for whatever reason, struggle to get pregnant until you start trying. Getting pregnant doesn't necessarily mean it'll result in a live birth. About 20%, I believe, of all pregnancies end in miscarriage, and your likelihood for miscarriage increases with age. As you age, your eggs are more likely to be chromosomally abnormal, and the reason behind most miscarriages is a chromosomal abnormality that made the fetus not viable. My only piece of advice is that if you are in your late 20s, early 30s, and it seems like having kids isn't going to happen anytime soon, even more than egg freezing, I think what would be really helpful is to start saving money. Time is money, money pays for time. Having disposable income is ultimately what is probably going to extend your fertility the most.
But if you can freeze those eggs, get them in there.
If you can freeze those eggs, get them in there.
If you're like 33 and feeling weird about it, freeze some eggs, you'll feel better.
Thanks, Dr. Andrew. And thank you for watching if you've made it this far. Click like and subscribe, and if you're interested in seeing more baby fertility IVF content, let me know. Okay, that's gonna do it. See you next time.